Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Ask SplitSuit a Question. I'm James SplitSuit Sweeney here for thepokerbank.com, and today we're going to answer one of your questions. So today's question comes from Elfspicer, and they say, since we cannot study our opponents as closely and we have a shorter time to act per hand when multitabling, what adjustments would you recommend? So this is a great question, and there's a bunch of things that I would recommend even before you start multitabling like this. First and foremost is you don't want to add more tables until you know that you're profitable. Right? You don't just want to throw more volume at it if all you're doing is burning money, because all you're going to do is burn money faster. So work on making sure that you're a strong poker player, that your fundamentals are built, that you know how to handle a ton of situations before you start adding a bunch of tables, because otherwise you're just going to pitch money at a faster rate, and that's not what we want to be doing. So make sure you're comfortable there, and a lot of that is going to require off-table work and study. And if you're planning on playing a lot of tables, say you're going to be playing 12 or more tables, you're right, you're not going to have a ton of time to make a bunch of decisions. So one of the big things you're going to want to do is start developing or having a good base understanding of kind of default lines. What are your default ranges per position? What does your default 3-bet range look like from X versus Y? And understanding how you're going to play basic things pre-flop and post-flop. What does your value betting strategy typically look like? What does your bluffing strategy typically look like? And I'm not saying this so that you go out there and be an ABC robot that never adjusts. That's a terrible idea. The reason why I say that is because sometimes you're going to get in spots where maybe there's 3 or 4 hands happening simultaneously. And then all of a sudden it's very difficult to dedicate the proper amount of energy to every spot that's happening. So maybe you just have to revert back to default thought processes and default ranges for a particular moment in a particular hand, that sort of thing. So I like having basic default lines and ranges kind of hammered out before I play, and I can develop all that stuff off the table. And that's, again, one of the big things that you can do in off-table time. You have a bunch of it, so use it to your advantage to understand what typical ranges look like for you, what typical lines look like for you, and then understandings on when you're going to adjust from those. Now, all of that being said, after you've developed all these default ideas and default lines and all of those default ranges and just basic things like that, I'm going to suggest that when you're choosing how many tables you want to play when multitabling, that you choose a number where you don't have to use these default things all the time, right? If you're really comfortable playing, say, 6 tables, jumping it up to 16 probably isn't going to make a lot of sense for you, because when you're playing 16, you're not going to have the time to dedicate to finding all the optimal little decisions and finding all the spots where you can be more dynamic or get away from a default range or default idea. Again, default ideas are just things that we can use if we have no other information or reason. But when we're playing really well, we're focusing really well, there's oftentimes lots of extra information we can use to veer away from a default line. So figure out how many tables are going to be right for you. For some people that could be 6, for some people that could be 2, for some people that could be 16 or even 24. Myself, I've played as many as 40, and obviously when I was playing 40, I could not focus as well as I wanted to on all the tables. I found my sweet spot for 6 max was about 6 tables. For full ring, it was about 12 to 14, tended to be pretty comfortable for me. But that worked for me. That may not work for you. So understand what works best for you and make sure that you're not always in default mindset, right? Because again, you're never going to be able to optimize your win rate. You're always going to have this meh win rate and leave a lot of money on the table. And that's really not our goal, particularly if we want to become the strongest players we can. Always using default stuff is definitely not going to be what we want to do. So again, find what works best for you so that you have enough time and you're not putting yourself in situations where you're reverted back to default all the time. And then the last little tip I'm going to give should be kind of basic, but a lot of players overlook it, is try to slow down. Even when you're playing a lot of tables, try to slow down so that you're not making all these super quick decisions and, again, not using all of your brain. Just take a couple seconds to make a decision. If you have a table that you know is just going to bother you if you decide to fold it because you have other stuff happening, just let that table time out for a moment. Really focus on the decisions that matter. Really focus on not just using autopilot strategies. That's going to be what's going to work best for you in the long run. So when in doubt, slow down. If you need to cut tables during a session or maybe just for the next little while, don't hesitate to do that. That's never going to be that bad of an idea. So Elfspicer, thanks for the great question, and hopefully this helps you when you're deciding how you want to multi-table. And if you or anyone else has a poker-related hand or question, feel free to leave it on our Google Plus page. I'll leave a link for that in the description box. And also, please make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this type of video. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, good luck out there, and happy grinding.